welcome to the Optix podcast, More Than Digital Marketing. We're your hosts. I'm Luke.
Hi, and I'm Jack.
And we will be going through a couple of digital marketing news stories and questions posed to, from the general public really, and give our opinions on it.
Yeah, so before we started, we pulled together some ideas for, kind of the sorts of things we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Things that we thought would be just kind of interesting to talk about, but then also things that we thought people out there might actually find interesting and useful and relevant to them.
Yeah.
So, where are we going to start?
I think we should start with the biggie, which is Starbucks getting ready to release NFTs on their Starbucks loyalty card scheme. So I think if you use, the idea is essentially that if you use Starbucks long enough, you'll get your own Starbucks branded NFT that comes through your loyalty card. And then you have this as their big digital initiative that they're pushing out.
It's funny that you picked that one, the only one that you sent across to me earlier that I didn't actually look at.
That's kind of it in a nutshell, to be fair. You know probably 100% of what everyone else seems to know ahead of their big push, their investor day, which they're doing on September 13th, where they're going to reveal exactly what it is they're doing. Just that they're in the process of gearing up to do Starbucks NFTs, which I don't think anyone asked for, but...
Well, I mean, even the subject of NFTs, is that something that you think is even like, for me, an NFT was something that is, it's one of those buzzwords that people talk about, and I'm not necessarily sure, like, yes, it definitely grabs headlines, but at the same time, how useful is that going to be to your sort of everyday person?
Yeah, so I think the way they've kind of phrased it and pushed it out is that they want to build an emotional engagement with Starbucks as a brand. So you become more invested in them as a brand, because if you keep using them, eventually you unlock this special NFT that's unique to you and special for you and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, they're also having this massive push on how sustainable they are, with NFTs arguably being the digital product that's the least sustainable thing on the entire market right now. So it's kind of a bit of a catch-22.
I mean, like, does this bring any sort of value to the people who are like actually going to Starbucks? Do you get like additional coffees or food or anything for actually using them, or is it more just, I guess, they're just grabbing headlines and getting backlinks?
Yeah, I guess it's partly they're grabbing headlines and getting backlinks. I mean, the article I sent you earlier was from Delish, so it wasn't even necessarily from a kind of marketing blog. But
you don't go to Delish for your marketing news?
I go there about all my marketing recipes for campaigns. But they kind of seem to think that this is going to increase engagement, and I don't really know what the user gets out of it, apart from Starbucks banded digital collectibles to build a community. I guess maybe you could sell it down the line.
Yeah.
But if NFTs are getting to the point where it's as easy to get one as buying a coffee, then surely that's heralding the big dip in how valuable they will be.
Well, the thing that I've read repeatedly about NFTs is the fact that there is this sort of big boom where everyone gets involved and they get really excited about, the newest NFT, and it has this, the actual price or value of an NFT is just huge out the gate. And then if you don't sell them quickly, they sort of drop off a cliff, and then you're sort of left with something that's entirely worthless. And it's sort of like, for me, it feels so fleeting.
Yeah, no, you're dead on. And what I don't understand as well is, as you say, that price comes out of the gate and it's so expensive, but who sets that value? It seems to just be someone comes out of the door and goes, this is worth £1 billion. And people go, yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's just accepted at face value. So there's got to be a drop off at some point.
No, definitely.
And I feel like this is potentially heralding that drop off, because...
Have you, sort of like moving the conversation slightly adjacent to Starbucks, do you know any local businesses that have got involved with NFTs, like businesses in the Southwest?
Not necessarily, really. I've known that some that I've worked with in the past were kind of looking at blockchain in general and how they could do that for their marketing. And one brand did approach us and ask how they could create their own branded NFTs. And we were like, we don't really understand why you want to do that, and it's quite a big investment for that.
I think, there's almost like the why side of it is kind of answered in this Starbucks article, which I guess we'll share. sort of as part of the episode description.
Yeah.
But yeah, the why aspect is it gets headlines, it gets people talking about you. You know, if there were sort of any of our clients that approached us and did want to ask or talk about that, that would be something, I guess, that we wouldn't sort of dismiss outright.
No.
Because it is, as I said, it's a buzzword. It's things that people like to talk about, and it's definitely something that, you know, if it's done creatively in an interesting way, it could actually have quite a significant impact, probably.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that these collectibles are collectible, and if you can collect them from lots of different sources, and if Starbucks do become the only ones that do this and they have this buzzword, then that kind of pays for itself, doesn't it? In that more people will buy a lot more coffee from Starbucks because they want to be on the, or seem to be on the blockchain hype train, as it were. And I think that's the main thing about it, is just being on that hype train is seen as quite important at the moment.
Yeah, and I guess like sort of thinking more broadly, like we're talking about Starbucks, so it's kind of like as an awareness piece, it works quite well.
This is very true.
But it's maybe not going to, and that awareness obviously filters through to more people going and buying coffee. But yeah, I think there's a potential that it works sort of more broadly, higher up the funnel to people who are more interested to learn about, or if Starbucks wants to drive that awareness.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that I'm kind of turning myself around on it a little bit now, but you've also got the idea that the people who are into like NFTs and blockchains are the kind of people that go to independent coffee shops and typically tend to go for that kind of more upmarket coffee. Yeah. Whereas if Starbucks are suddenly seen as these front runners doing stuff that they're interested in, then they're going to take some of that business away from independent coffee shops and more towards Starbucks' big chain of being on that, and regain some of that customer base that we're moving away from them a little bit.
And I guess it's possibly as well for a company like Starbucks, they have to get involved with something like that as well. You know, you get big businesses, and the NBA comes to mind, like in America, like they released a set of NFTs that were all to do with their all of their all-star players. And it was a case of like, really? The NBA, why are you guys getting involved? And it was kind of a joke at the time, but then at the same time, like they were hugely successful, like really popular. Everyone quite enjoyed the novelty of that, and they were kind of ahead of the curve. And so the fact that, I think a lot of big businesses look to examples like that and think we should probably get involved with that as well.
Yeah, I think you're dead on with that. I think that's kind of everything we can possibly say about NFTs for Starbucks. I think I've kind of talked myself round from thinking it's stupid to actually this is a genius brand awareness piece that they're doing here. So now I'm all on board for Starbucks doing NFTs.
Great. And maybe we should get involved as well.
Yeah, we should do some Optix NFTs.
So the next sort of piece of news that I wanted to bring along today was about the Google's new helpful content update. So Google, as we all know, they regularly come along and have updates that are going to impact websites across the internet. So what happened very recently, just last week, was Google brought along this new update, the helpful content update, which essentially is them checking across the board across all websites online that are indexed at Google to essentially see how relevant the content that they have on their website actually is. And it's a new ranking signal that basically is checking the content on the site, seeing if it sort of passes some sort of quality control. And if it does pass that quality control, then that has the potential to help your website's visibility in search. And if it doesn't pass that quality control, then it will negatively impact the potential for the website to rank. The one sort of issue within, or wrinkle within all of this, is that it has site-wide implications. So if you have one or even two pieces of content that don't necessarily pass this quality check, that's going to pull down the whole website's potential to rank. So what this means is that it's really important for everyone to review all of the content that they have on their websites. For some smaller websites, this isn't going to be such a big issue, but for much larger websites that have a lot of content, it essentially means that you're going to have to go through years potentially of back, blogs and pages and every sort of piece of content that you have, and sort of review to understand, is this content good? Is it useful? Is it relevant? Because if it's not, it could be affecting the whole website's visibility, which is not great.
Not the best thing in the world you want to happen. My worry with this kind of helpful content update is how granular they're going to be looking. So say, for example, you've got a jeweller's, any given jeweller's, but you also sell watches. How does it kind of differentiate? Because you're going to write content about those two things, but if you suddenly start writing about watches one month and then necklaces the next, is it going to mark you down on that kind of granular level?
So I think that that's an interesting point. I think, for me at least, that when websites are created, across the board, you'll have content that is going to be sort of like written around those two different elements. So if you would expect that Google is going to recognize that this is a website that through the content on all of the pages, we can recognize that it's about watches and it's also about jewelry. But if you suddenly had a page that was all about, I don't know, zoos and safaris and something like that, that would be a piece of content that maybe wouldn't be aligned with the other stuff on the website. So then it would start to, flag red flags over, is this actually relevant? Is it useful?
Sure.
But again, if that page has engagement and people engage with it, then obviously that wouldn't necessarily have a huge negative impact, because if it was solving a search query that people were looking for, and when people went to that page and they found that content to be relevant to the original search that they had, and it answered the query that people had originally put in Google, then it wouldn't necessarily have a negative impact on the website as a whole. So that would, in my own example, that does actually sort of like tick all the boxes for that helpful content. But it's more if there was a page that they had that was specifically around watches and the content was poorly written, it didn't answer any specific question, and it was just written essentially to feed an algorithm, then I think that would negatively impact the site.
Sure. Do we know roughly how Google is determining what's useful? And
it's that magic word, machine learning.
Machine learning. That's what it might be.
So yeah, that obviously makes things very difficult as to what is the right way and the wrong way. But there are a lot of things that we can look at and look to understand. Does this page actually have any visibility in search engines? When people do actually visit the pages, do they actually engage with it? Is it something, we can see how many people are going to a page, and Google sees that too. Is there any traffic to the page? And if there isn't, then obviously that's a page that is not really serving any real purpose and isn't exactly helpful, because no one goes there.
That does then bring into the question of, I think it was SEMrush that had that study saying that people don't typically visit their blog posts until like 6 months after they were published. So are we looking to kind of we're going to have to start creating content that's a lot more reactive and useful the second it's published? Or are we still looking to kind of go down that route where we know that content does start to impact things positively further down the line? But if the algorithm picks that up as no one going there for 6 months but then potentially would have picked up 6 months down the line.
I think, you have to have confidence in the content that you're already putting out. So if you are writing content that you sort of like goes through all these sort of checks and balances, that you do the research before you actually put it out, you have something that you actually want to write about that you think is going to be really interesting and actually serves a purpose for existing that is beyond just, I want to bring people to my website. If you're actually attacking this sort of issue of people genuinely are asking this question and I know that I have the answer to actually solve that query, I think that's going to be the sort of thing that breaks it. So people have to sort of check themselves and actually ask themselves, what is the point of doing this? Why am I writing this? If it's to actually solve a genuine question, then I think that it's going to have like a real meaningful impact.
So I see what you mean. Like, we're talking about an increase in quality rather than quantity.
Yeah,
not just
definitely.
writing your monthly blog because you have to write your monthly blog.
Yeah, exactly. My boss
Writing
told
it
me I
with-
need to write something every month.
Yeah, writing it with a point in mind,
Yeah.
and that point being to help your customers who are looking for products like yours or services like yours.
And I think it's also having that balance of like looking and seeing, it's been 6 months since I wrote that blog and it still gets no traffic. That is probably a problem.
Yeah.
But if you write a blog and then 6 months later, you're getting some good quality traffic and people are engaging with it. 7 months it's growing, 8 months it's growing even more. Like that's a good sign.
Yeah.
And that's again, if we're talking about evergreen content, and that's the sort of content, that I think that they would like to see more being produced, that is actually going to serve, as I said, serve a purpose.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it all seems to work. I mean, if it works in practice is the other question. But hopefully it all kind of will impact everyone positively, and it means that people can dedicate time and resource to making better content rather than just stock content that has the keywords in.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if I could find, there was a list that I had earlier of questions that we could sort of ask ourselves as to like whether or not this is sort of up to scratch. Typically though, I close the window and it's gone now. So we'll spin some wheels and see if I can find it. Here we go. Wheels have been spun. So yeah, some of the questions that you could sort of think to yourself is the content primarily made for humans rather than to attract people from search? So yes or no. Does your content actually answer the question that it promised to answer? So like, have you hidden, people are actually searching for something. Did you hide the answer that you're actually trying to provide deep down somewhere in the middle of it that is so difficult to find that people get frustrated? Does the content provide a substantial, complete, or comprehensive description of the topic? So
kind of
that's a real sort of quality one.
We're looking at a bigger focus on like long tail keywords then, not just kind of focused on your product keyword now, but more what people are looking for in terms of, like, as I say, long tail keywords. So free tools like Answer the Public, for example, will become way more important going forwards because they give you those longer tail keywords of the questions that people are asking, and you have to accurately provide the answer in a high quality, succinct way that works for that.
Yeah.
And that's how essentially Google's going to kind of judge your content, essentially, is whether or not you take that question into account and then give the answer to that question through an algorithm that is way above my pay grade. But
yeah. I think the other thing as well to consider in all of this is it's not alarmist. This shouldn't be like a huge moment where you sort of panic and think, oh my God, I've got to like scrap everything that I've got on my website. I'd like to sort of reemphasize that a lot of, the work that we've been doing and that a lot of people out there do is write good quality content that isn't trying to sort of feed some sort of algorithm. At the end of the day, we're always trying to like help people, aren't we? So it's not a case that we suddenly, have to change the way that we've been working and, go back to the drawing board and think about like, how do we actually, do this properly? It's just a case of there could be the potential for these much bigger websites out there that have had content, generated for years that no one's really sort of looking at, that's just been sitting, lying, about someone's recent promotion that was about 3 promotions ago, and they're currently sat, like earning twice as much money as they were that promotion that they got in the original blog post.
Sure.
So just going over the websites with a fine-tooth comb and just being genuine, and just because it's an old piece of content doesn't mean that it's useless.
Yeah.
You can always refresh, update, renew any piece of content. If it's a blog post that's specific to 2019, top 5 digital marketing tools 2019, rewrite it for 2022 or 2023 now that we're almost at the end of it.
We are. Yeah, that makes sense. So, and then being realistic to yourself and truthful with yourself of, is this useful or is this a vanity piece?
Well,
I've written as well.
Yeah,
that would make sense.
Cool. So that's helpful content for today.
That is helpful content for today. One that I brought to the table was from Marketing Tech, and they've made a big broad statement saying that an influencer endorsement makes consumer engagement far more likely. and how influencer marketing budgets across social media are continuing to grow to the tunes of billions, with people like Love Island winners getting major brand deals.
Yeah,
So
because
some
it
random-
was eBay.
Yeah,
eBay's the big Love Island one this year.
they are. And then Factory Workers becoming the most followed TikTok account, with content creator influence spreading very far and wide. I think I agree with this. I believe. I think that even some of the older demographics that are on primarily Facebook at this point still follow people that they trust, and there is a position there for older influencers.
I think I don't find this headline particularly surprising. It's sort of like people that you know and like and respect, etc., influence your purchasing decisions. Like, that's not, we've been seeing that celebrities and everything through traditional marketing for, forever, as long as I've been around, at least. So like even what actors, celebrities, etc., being the faces of perfumes and stuff like that. So yeah,
I'd say it's become more important now than with the celebrities of the past, because I feel like influencer followings have become cult-like.
Oh yeah.
And there's definitely some influencers out there that if you say a bad word against them,
oh yeah,
like you get death threats and things like that. And it's like, but then with that in mind, those people have that power to then go, like, these people that will protect them with their lives, this random person on the internet, to say, you should buy this product, and things like that. And I see it quite heavily in like the fitness sphere at the moment. It seems to be the biggest thing that I see from influencers, for example, of people saying, you can look like me if you just take X, Y, and Z supplement, and here is my discount code. And it's like, no, I can look like you if I take steroids.
Yeah.
And have your genetics. But I'm seeing that, and then you get those people that, but they have a cult-like following, and no matter what they say, people will flock in their droves to buy these products and shop these products, and you see it across all of it. And I worry about younger audiences and younger generational things, because they're the most likely to be following influencers at this point. I think that we will up to a point, but we've become kind of blind to it, and we see them as celebrities.
But I think there's a difference as well. There's probably like a demographic difference where we've kind of like grown up to the point that we're sort of past that. Like when you look at sort of the much sort of younger demographics where they've sort of like grown up and this has been their only sort of real interaction. I was speaking to someone the other day and they were talking about the fact that, children now, when you ask them, if you sort of asked us back in the day, what do you want to be? And it's like, I want to be a movie star. I want to be a rock star, or whatever it might be. But like now it's like, what do you want to be? It's like, I want to be an influencer. I want to be a podcaster. I want to be, famous on TikTok, whatever it might be. So like that's what people or younger people aspire to be. And so it's, again, like not really too surprising at this stage that, that's actually what they're finding.
Yeah, and these influencers are getting traditional kind of marketing deals now as well. So they are transcending their given social media platform and coming onto TV and doing their influencer job within the TV sphere as well, with that traditional marketing side of things is what I'm kind of seeing. But you've got them bleeding into everything now, and there's just so much noise around the role of a social media influencer and where their role kind of needs to end. But it's just quite an interesting thing to look at because of the fact that it can take one person to say something about your product and suddenly it's flown off the shelves. But then again, you see it from celebrities at the same time. I mean, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney bought a football club and then did ads for everyone that sponsors that football club.
Yeah, but going back to what you said before about like whether, levels of celebrity versus levels of influencer, like he has a huge following online, but like compared to some influencers, it's just incomparable almost.
Yeah, so some of the like the stats that they were batting around within the marketing tech blog specifically was saying that 72% were more likely to purchase a product if the creator demonstrated that they put a level of research in, with 55% being confident that they would purchase a product from a creator who just knows something about it. So basically like 55% of people that see that product from an influencer will go on to purchase it, essentially.
Right. We're going to have to take a quick time out because my computer's about to die. So
oh no.
let's just take a really awkward break, and we'll be right back.
Yeah, I was just saying about how 55% of people that will see an influencer mention something will then suddenly go and buy it, and which I think is a massive conversion rate. And you've got major brands noticing it as well, like Durex got loads of influencers on board, and did that Fit Matters campaign, which was loads of out of home stuff as well. But just getting those kind of people to do that comes with a massive conversion rate with it.
Yeah, I've moved and I'm sat in a really weird place, so I'm just gonna have to like shift around awkwardly.
It's fine. It's
okay.
It's episode 0.
Yeah, it's fine. Just the impact of influencer marketing, and I mean, it's obviously not going away anytime soon. And the only thing that really changes is the platform. You know, every single platform has different influencers, and people like to engage with creators in different ways. You know, and you see that it's interesting that like certain creators will be on one platform, they go to another platform, but their followership doesn't necessarily follow them. So they only like to engage with them in certain places, which I think is like sort of off the back of this. I think that's quite interesting.
I think so, and because you see it quite a lot specifically with like Twitch streamers.
Yeah,
I remember a couple. I can't remember the name for the life of me, but one guy broke his relationship. Yes, broke his relationship off with Twitch. Went to YouTube, got absolutely nothing out of YouTube, and then had to go back to Twitch.
No, I thought he got lots of money.
He got lots of money, but his viewership like dwindled.
Yeah, but
that's
I think, isn't it terrible that was the example I was probably thinking of?
Yeah,
but you know, one of the biggest Twitch streamers at the time, I don't think he is anymore, but the fact that he was, you know, invited to go to YouTube for millions and millions, and then he went across, his followers didn't go with him, and the whole platform just buckled, and they just paid him out anyway. But I think a lot of people did lose out, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah. But
just by changing platforms. But then you look at it as an overarching thing, and the more these platforms differ and the more people have these separate platforms, the more they're staying the same. So going back to kind of the Durex side of things, they used out-of-home advertising for these influencers and things like that. And that's becoming way more accessible than ever before, these out-of-home advertising, because, I mean, you can run a display campaign at a bus stop now.
Ah, no, you've jumped to the next news story.
I thought that was like the perfect segue.
You can only do segues by announcing that it's a segue. Speaking of... you know...
This is speaking of. There you go.
Speaking of out-of-home ads.
Yeah, we've addressed the segue.
You know, you're going to hang a lampshade on it before you can actually jump across. So please tell me more about this out-of-home ads.
Well, this was something that you sent me across. So it's quite an interesting one about how you can now run... they're calling it the best of out-of-home and digital combined.
But it's just for me, this feels like such a crazy, when I heard about this news, I did just say, this is crazy. Like just how digital is just evolving and crossing that like blending those lines between, you know, digital marketing is online only versus, oh wait, now I'm going to see it everywhere I go. And we've seen so many examples of that, but just for me, this is really really just, so close to traditional marketing now. And it's so accessible to everyone, and that's for me the big difference, is that accessibility piece of just, you know, some of these things I always felt so kept behind, and you can only advertise here if you've got this ridiculously insane budget. That for big businesses that's really easy to do, where it's just like, oh well, that's just a fraction of, you know, that's just a fraction of what we would spend in a month, versus, you know, that could be an entire, you know, business's marketing budget for a whole year. But as I said, accessibility I think is what really jumped out to me, and how great this is going to be for so many businesses. Yeah,
and it was one of those things as well, as you say, it was quite gate kept, because you also had to have the relationship with a certain provider of those bus stop ads, for example, and they were the only people that could put the ads there. They had to be to their specs, all of this sort of stuff. Whereas now it's sort of like Google are buying up bus stations and whatever else that's going to be happening.
What for your Google bus?
For that, you can have Google Bus is coming. But you'll be able to have all of this sort of programmatic digital out of home, essentially. My worry with it is
you worry about this stuff. I think it's great
stuff. Now see, it's the tracking.
Oh yeah.
So
well,
being so into data and tracking every single click and everything that I possibly can.
But it's probably not going to be as tracked as you might think. Like maybe location tracking, but that's when it starts to get weird. But considering like, you know, moving forwards and we're sort of moving towards this cookieless future, inverted commas.
Eventually.
I could do that actually.
Yeah.
I don't have to say that I'm doing it. Yeah, moving towards this cookieless future that's, you know, years and years away still, and they keep pushing it back. But I think again that this is going to be more traditional, where it's, I know that my target audience tends to be people who would ride the bus, or, you know, they go to football games, or they tend to travel abroad, so they'll be in airports. So you can put these ads where, again, you know, more in terms of a traditional marketing piece where it's more awareness driven and not as, you know, you're trying to target more broadly.
Yeah.
So for a niche audience, this might not work unless you know that they only ride the bus at like 6 a.m, between 6 and 6:15, or whatever the, you know, your particular persona might be. But yeah, I do think, yeah,
I think it's less good for if you're a straight up, you provide all your services online, for example, or you're completely e-commerce. However, I think it's incredible for businesses that get a good level of footfall. So I think if you can provide those digital ads around you, that's going to have like some footfall. So take the museum near us, for example. If they can suddenly start running display advertising that's around a footfall area of the museum to be like, come into here, you could almost then use the ads to provide kind of directions going.
Well, definitely, yeah.
I was going to say the giraffe, but the giraffe's gone, isn't it? But our famous giraffe is only 500 steps away, and things like that is going to be
with
really
arrows at different bus stations pointing you in different directions and sort of working all together. And then, like, again, you know, as you start to build this into a larger campaign where you're not only seeing it on your, you know, bus stop or wherever it might be, you're also seeing it on your phone, and you're seeing it on socials, and you're seeing it in you know, different places, then it's going to build into a, you know, a much more cohesive and comprehensive campaign that's actually going to, you know, hopefully drive more, you know, success for businesses.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see how the current providers kind of come at it as well, because I know that, I mean, now you need to kind of go through Clear Channel, JC.co, etc., etc., and I can see that they're on board and that they're still being part of this programmatic digital out of home stuff, but I'm unsure how and what it is that they're specifically doing for that, because they're not going to be installing the ads, because we'll be building the ads, throwing them out there as marketers. So I guess they'll just own the platform still.
I think my biggest surprise at this point is, why is it taking so long? It seems like kind of a no-brainer. There must have been some roadblocks in the way or something that's actually stopped them from getting to this point quicker. Yeah,
because video on bus stops is not a new thing. Like, you've been able to use animated ads on bus stops for the longest time. It's just now that it's now self-serve.
Yeah.
Instead of account management.
Yeah, going through a particular business or whatever it might be.
You can just self-serve and do it yourself now, which I feel like I imagine Clear Channel and JC.co and all those big providers of those things are getting a nice little kickback of that.
Yeah.
Which is probably going to equal less work for them for more money. So it's probably going to work in everyone's favour, to be honest. But then, how do you measure the effectiveness of it? I guess you would just have to do it in the same way we used to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You would know where a particular sign or, you know, whatever it is, billboard might be. You know roughly how many people use or walk past it on a daily basis. And it's the same very much, you know, with, as you said, traditional, like, how do we do it before? Well, that's how we'll have to do it again. But, you know, that's just unfortunately the way it will have to be. And again, like, more broadly speaking, cookieless future, I think that's the way a lot of it might be, you know, looking forwards. We're not going to be as targeted as we potentially have been, or the way that we go about it is going to be slightly different. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be impossible, you know, to do marketing in the future. It's just going to be, again, like a slight different shift in the way that we do it, but we'll still be able to achieve, the results that we do.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like you say, it's going to be very different. We'll have to change the way we work around things, but we'll still be able to do it. And this is all kind of, as you say, the cookieless future as well, which we don't really know what that's going to look like at the moment because
Cookieless.
But I don't think Google know what that's going to look like because they proposed a solution, which was Flocks.
Yeah.
Put it out. They had to have a certain level of buy-in. Everyone went no, so they postponed cookieless future for another 2 years.
Yeah. Well, it's not my future.
No, it's not my future. I'm going to use cookies until I possibly can't use cookies anymore.
Yeah. The problem is that that's kind of like what everyone's got used to in terms of the way that we approach digital marketing, the way that we think about, everything that we do. It's just going to have to evolve. But also people, are much more used to the idea. Everyone's so much more aware of privacy and their data and how their data is used. People don't like to be tracked. I don't like to be tracked. You set up a campaign recently and someone said that you did an amazing job because as soon as they'd been on the website, they couldn't, they were literally seeing your ads everywhere, which is, the way that, your campaign was designed to work, and it worked very well. But they were very aware of what was happening to them, the fact that you were remarketing, after they had been to the website. So
see, I'm the complete opposite to you then, because I like being tracked. I want everything that I feel like I'm of the opinion I've got nothing to hide.
Oh, sure.
So
don't get me wrong,
all
though.
of my advertising to be relevant to me and not just be everything that they think I like.
No, but that's the sort of flip side, and that's sort of playing devil's advocate as well, of like people like to be, people like targeted ads because they like, why do you want to be targeted with something that's completely irrelevant and useless? Wouldn't you rather be targeted with something that was actually, going to enhance your life, hopefully? And I think that that's how people would market the fact that, or how advocates of tracking would market that idea of people like it. And people do like it.
Yeah.
But, sorry, I missed my mic.
That's all right. I am definitely the advocates of tracking, so maybe that's partly why.
I don't think, obviously I think it's a very good thing because it allows me to do what I do for a living. But at the same time, I'm not particularly, I'm kind of not too bothered by it. But only because, you can only be tracked by so much data as you provide online. And I don't think I sort of go to ridiculous lengths to share my life story at every possible opportunity online. So advertising and marketing online is only as good as the data that you provide, with sort of an asterisk of the fact that a lot of people just track me through things of credit card companies and stuff like that. But that's beside the point.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah, there's a limit there. And I think that, well, we've reached it. We've got no choice. We're kind of going forward past the limit now. So it is. Yeah. It's not a if Google go cookieless. It's when.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, that was all of the articles that we shared between each other. So I did have an idea to ask some random questions, which I had lined up, which again have disappeared from the window that I had open. So let's see if I can find it. But whilst I do you have any questions that you might want to fire off at me that were definitely not scripted beforehand?
On the spot now.
Yeah.
No.
So
I guess it's a question of just to bring to the floor really of GA4.
Yep.
We know it's inevitable.
We love talking about GA4.
We do love talking about GA4.
So before we sort of go any further, when we're talking about GA4, it's Google Analytics 4.
Yep.
Which is, so every business or the vast majority of businesses use Google Analytics to review how people are interacting with their website. So you can get a lot of information and user data about how people arrive at the website, what they do when they're there, and if they actually complete any goals or actions that you have sort of noted down as being important or relevant to your business. So Google Analytics is something that a lot of businesses use. They are introducing a new Google Analytics called Google Analytics 4, So the current version is Universal Analytics, which is number 3.
Which is number 3.
And so, yeah, shorthand is GA4.
GA4. And Universal Analytics come July of 2023 will be illegal
In the EU. Yeah.
Yeah. And that includes the UK.
Yeah.
But will effectively become illegal. So there is GA4. So now my big bugbear with it, I think that a lot of what they're doing with Google Analytics 4 is fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that the data-driven attribution, so being able to see that your social media campaign contributed 30% of your conversion and things like that, great, big move forward. My big issue with it at the moment is that it only holds your website data for 3 months maximum.
I thought you could update the settings so that it's for a longer period of time. Was that
I
wrong?
think it's, so the standard is 30 days.
Right.
And then you can update it to basically be 3 months. This has probably changed by the time we
No.
publish.
Well, it's worth saying as well that because it's July next year,
Yeah.
every day they have a team at Google, probably teams all over the world, working collaboratively to make improvements to this platform because it is so important to so many businesses. So there are a lot of functionality that we keep saying, why isn't this in here? And then like a week later, it actually is.
We did a fantastic run through of Google Analytics 4 with a client, showed them everything they could do. They asked us the question of, so are we losing this? And we were like, unfortunately, yes, that's not compatible with Google Analytics 4. And then the next day we had to send the email going, they've just updated it, we can do this now.
Yeah, we didn't know that beforehand, but we do now. So
yeah. And because they're not telling anyone these updates until the updates roll out either. They're just kind of doing them and then going, you can do this now, and that's it. And I don't like that, because we know that year-on-year trends exist. And year-on-year trends, I believe, are arguably more important than month-on-month trends, because comparing, say you're a paddleboard company, for example, comparing your sales from...
I'll go with this. Where are we going with this?
Comparing your sales from August to September, not that relevant. We've looked at 2 weeks ago, we had a heat wave, loads of people out on paddleboards. Now it's chucking it down with rain. No one's buying paddleboards and going out on paddleboards. We don't want to be looking at the month-to-month data for that point. That's where annual data is more relevant to us, because we want to make sure that we're improving year on year.
Yeah.
But
so
August
essentially,
is not going to be.
Essentially, what we're saying though is that within the platform, we're not able to do that.
No.
But we need to be exporting that data wherever we can. And you never know the sorts of questions that you're going to be asking in a year's time. So I guess you just want to be making sure that you're making a record of as much data as possible on a regular basis to make sure that you have access to everything that you'll possibly need down the line.
And to start, as a bit of advice, to start providing yourself with monthly snapshots of your data yesterday. And take it from as much as you can from Universal Analytics as well, because once GA4 kicks in, the historic data goes away as far as I'm aware as well.
Yeah.
So
I think
you will lose.
Is it
potentially
October?
Years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you lose years of data, but you can export all of that and take those years as snapshots.
Yep.
And things like that. So
I think
my big advice.
My biggest gripe with GA4, not that this should turn into sort of GA4 bashing, but I think my biggest issue with it so far has been just how complicated and difficult it is to actually implement. So Universal Analytics was a bit of code that you just put on your website, and once it was in, essentially it would just work.
Yeah.
Whereas now with GA4, the code for it that is a lot more complex, and it requires the need for website developers to get involved and just to make sure that it's sitting in every single part of the website that it possibly can, and essentially is just, as I said, far more complicated, far more complex to actually implement it and set it up, which is, for the businesses that have the resource in-house, that's not a problem. But when businesses sort of, they've spent time, resource building a website, and then you sort of getting to the point where it's like, oh, now I want to understand how well my website actually functions. Yeah. Oh, sorry, it's not going to be that easy as it was before. Now you have to pay for website developers to get involved. And it's not as simple as just putting it in the code. You've got to test it, make sure it works. And it's just, for me, for a lot of businesses out there, it's just another cost that they've got to consider and factor in, that, to get access to something that was so easy before is just so, for me, so difficult. Yeah, well. Definitely.
But it makes sense to me, because I feel like for a while, and it's been coming for a little while now, that Google have been doing a bit of a developer first approach to things. a couple of years back, they did a marketer first approach to everything, and they introduced things like Tag Manager, where marketers could take a lot of the work away from devs and just stick it in Tag Manager, and away you go. And they're kind of moving more towards, you got to get the developers back in and things like that. And I feel like they're pushing that a bit more now to help developers that they've, like web developers that they've got as businesses under their umbrellas as well.
Yeah. Well, I can't find the questions that I was looking for, but none of them were as good as that question you just asked me. I think that sort of brought us full circle, very much in line with the sorts of things that we were talking about just before. So I think that that's probably a good place to bring episode 0 to an end. Worth saying to anyone who's actually listened to this, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it interesting, useful. We would love to hear your thoughts. We've just set up a new email address, which is, let's find it.
But yeah, if you've got any articles that you want us to discuss, to look at, to give our humble opinions on,
yeah, absolutely,
please do send them in, and we will kind of discuss them live on the show.
Yeah, so email address is morethandigitalmarketing@optixsolutions.co.uk. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, that would be, we'd love to hear from you, answer those questions. As Luke said, if you have any articles you'd like us to discuss, that would be great. We'd love to really sink our teeth into those.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.